My Bible's open to Matthew chapter 27, where we'll begin. Matthew chapter 27. Matthew chapter 27. I said briefly in the lesson previous to this one that Sundays are the best day of the week. I will elaborate on that more fully now. Sundays are the best day of the week. And here's why. Sunday is the day we get to come together as the family of God in worship to our Father in heaven, in songs of praise to His great and matchless name, time in His Word, time petitioning Him in prayers, time encouraging one another, a simple foretaste of what we will do in eternal glory. And so, folks, it just doesn't get any better than this time right now. Sundays are indeed the best day of the week. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of your Sunday today. And look forward to the next few days. I think we should just get into the study. How about that? Before I go any further and start embarrassing myself. So let's do this. Matthew 27, please. Verse 35. And they crucified Him and divided His garments, casting lots that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. And sitting down there, they kept watch over Him. They crucified Him. I don't think there would be any disagreement if I said that the central doctrine of the Christian faith is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is the linchpin that everything is connected to in some form or fashion. Everything is a derivative of what He did when He came back from the dead. Paul would even make the case that it was by the resurrection of Christ that He proved Himself or declared Himself to be the Son of God in Romans 1 and verse 4. The reality is, everything we do comes in some sense because Jesus Christ came back from the dead, and nobody has done that before Him. He has come back from the dead and stayed alive forevermore. Now, as comfortable as we might be in discussing the resurrection, brethren, we need to be just as equally comfortable discussing the cross that precedes it. And I think that's sometimes where we struggle a little bit. Because of the brutality of such an event, because of the grotesque nature of such an event, we in some cases shy away from it. In some cases, perhaps it's because we recognize there are little ears listening, and sometimes we just don't want to talk about some of those details because of those little ears, and I've got little ears at home too, I get that. But the reality is, we need to come to terms with the cross. We need to be confronted by the cross in all its brutality, in all the grotesque nature of it, and all the things that very well might turn our stomach. If it were not for the cross, we would not have the empty tomb. And so, folks, I think we need to come to terms with that. Now, in some cases, what we will do is study what Jesus said. We'll study the sayings of Jesus from the cross. I think that's an incredibly worthwhile study. Danny should do it next Sunday. So it's an incredible worthwhile study because in the moment of those agony and that pain, what He said is incredibly significant. But folks, I would also say the things He could have said are equally powerful. So that's what I want to share with you this morning. This will not, in some cases, be a very pleasant study, but I do believe it is an absolutely essential study. I want to back up in our text, Matthew 26, please. Matthew chapter 26. Conveniently, Danny worked out of this text just previous to this when he made comments regarding the Lord's Supper. And so we're actually going to pick up in verse 36. Verse 36, a few verses where he left off. Verse 36, let's begin there. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, "Sit here while I go and pray over there." He took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me." And he went a little farther, fell on his face, and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will." And he came to the disciples, found them asleep, and said to Peter, What could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup may not pass from me, unless I drink it, your will be done. He came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. He left them, went away again, and prayed the third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples, said to them, Sleep on now, take your rest. Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hand of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, he who betrays me is at hand. Now, I will tell you, there are a lot of other things he could have said. I'm going to highlight a few going through Matthew's account. And please understand, if he says just one of them, Sundays are no longer the best day of the week. The Lord's Supper is no more a memorial which we observe. We are not gathered on Sundays to worship Him. We are not gathered to read from His Word. If He just says one of these things. What if in this moment, folks, He had simply said, not today? As you're reading through the garden scene where Jesus is in agony, and there is no mistaking it, no question about it, He is deeply distressed undergoing all of these things. What if He had said, not today? Now, we sing a song sometimes, Tell Me the Story of Jesus. Have you ever caught the third verse? Tell of the cross where they nailed Him, writhing in anguish and pain. You understand, folks, that when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, that's what He's anticipating. There is a reason that here in the garden, He is in deep distress and sorrow. In fact, He even comes out and says so to His disciples in verse 38. My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. I think it's hard to truly fathom the scope of pressure on Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And while you and I may not understand all of the complexities that exist between some of these things, the reality is what we can relate to so much is the humanity and the pain and suffering that this is God in the flesh. What He anticipates brings Him agony like you and I have never experienced. Sorrowful even to death. That's an expression, isn't it? Sorrowful even to death. You know, we have trivialized an element of that type of saying, such and such to death. So I'm regularly with my children sick to death. And my children equally are regularly starving to death. And we have trivialized some of those things, haven't we? The idea is that I am at the point of death from this that's causing it. And so if we're sick to death, well, we are sick to the point of death. We are so sick that we're about to die. Brethren, when He says such a thing as sorrowful even to death, it's that the sorrow is so intense, that the sorrow is so great to bear in the moment, that death itself seems to knock on the door. What if He had just simply said, not today? What if, now that the time has come, He decides the time shall pass forward? that it's not going to happen at this moment. And in fact, I think we as a typical habit are very good at getting out of things we don't want to do. I mean, it's really easy to put off a project you don't want to do. My mother was the world's worst. Of when we were out in public, she would look at me and she'd pull me in real close and she'd say, when we get home, I'm going to kill you. And she meant it. I told my daughters I died 3 times in childhood. And all 3 were my mother. But what does a child do in that moment? As a parent, we've all been there, haven't we? Oh, mama. No mama is as beautiful as you. No mama is as good as you. You are a kind and gracious mama. You would never inflict any sort of pain upon me, mama, and I will behave from now on, I promise. Is that what we do? That's exactly what children do, because we want to get out of anything that is uncomfortable for us. How easy is it to put off an appointment you don't want to have? You know, when the dentist says you need to come back in a few months and do this, this, or that, and we say, okay, see you. And I'll see you the next time I need to floss. You know, I'll come back then. We put off what we don't want to do. And look at our King, Jesus Christ, in the Garden of Gethsemane, folks. This is a situation that calls for His attention. And to borrow some ideas that Paul makes, Romans 1, 2, and 3, it's not something that Jesus deserves, is it? It's something that we deserve. Jesus is not in the Garden of Gethsemane paying some penalty that He owed. Oh, you know, I just kind of messed up, and now I've got to make it right, Jesus said. No! Romans 1, 2, and 3. Gentiles are sinners. Jews are sinners. Everybody has sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. The point in Romans 1, 2, and 3 Paul makes against all of humanity is every person that has chosen to depart from God, every person at some point has rejected God's counsel, and because of such is worthy of hellfire. That's not fun to talk about. But the reality is, that's the just punishment we earned because we lived in rebellion. And so Jesus is not in the garden sitting here thinking, this is what I've got. This is me. This is all. This is what He's doing because us. What if He says, not today? Not something He deserves. What if all the things He's facing? In fact, even the prayer, "Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me." 3 times He prays such a prayer. And yet He continues to be resolved, nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Instead of Him ever saying, not today, He actually says, today is the day. Today is the day. And the day is today because He allowed it to be so. Because the Father willed it to be so. And Jesus, out of obedience to the Father, faced it all. You could tie in some of the statements that are made in the other accounts, that His sweat here became as drops of blood. That He was so overcome. In fact, even verse 39 seems to depict this. He went a little farther, fell on His face, and prayed. The depiction is, folks, that Jesus begins to walk away from the disciples whom have disappointed Him, and it's as if He can't take another step without hitting His knees in prayer to the Father. You know the painful application? How many times do we say not today? Here's an occasion to encourage my brethren. And what do we say? Not today. Here's an opportunity to serve my brethren, to look out for somebody besides myself. And what do we say? Not today. The occasion comes, I should be baptized. I know I need to be baptized. I know I need to obey the gospel of Jesus Christ. I haven't done that. Scripture teach it. I know I need to do it. What do we say? Not today. Why do we find it so easy to hurl up these cheap excuses that prevent us from doing exactly what's right when our King Jesus Christ found it possible to do something so unimaginably difficult? Everything would have changed, folks, with 2 words. Let's push a little bit further. Look at verse 47. Verse 47. Not only could He have said, not today, he could have said, I'm not ready. Look at verse 47. While He was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude, with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he who was betraying Him had given them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one, seize him. And immediately he went up to Jesus and said, Greetings, Rabbi, and kissed Him. And Jesus said to him, Friend, why have you come? Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and took Him. And suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand, drew his sword, struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, Put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you not think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and He will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? How then will the Scriptures be fulfilled that it must be thus? In that hour Jesus said to the multitudes, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to take me? I sat daily with you teaching in the temple, and you did not seize me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. Now, what if in this moment he decides, I'm just not ready to do this? Now, understand something, folks. As Scripture clearly teaches, Jesus is not just a lowly first century carpenter. He is truly God and truly man. In fact, to push that one step further, He's not just God, He's God who created everything. That's John 1. That Jesus made all things, and all things are held together by Him. Colossians 1 supports that, and so does Hebrews 1. We got three texts that stress Jesus is the creative agency behind the entire world's material existence. Let that sink in for just a second. Folks, this is the God who made the universe, wrapped in human flesh. When this multitude comes out to Him, He lets them take Him. I want you to see this. Verse 50 is about the most ironic statement in all of Scripture. They came and laid hands on Jesus and took Him. Folks, you can't lay your hands on God to overpower God. You can't bind God with something that would hold God. What do you think they bound His hands with? Just some really good hemp cord or something? He's God in the flesh. This is the same God who walks on water and calms storms and gives blind men sight and heals the cripples. He lets the multitude take Him. He is not outpowered. He is not outmanned. He is not outmaneuvered. And Peter even gives Him the scape. Peter whoops out the sword, lops off the ear. If Jesus wants out at this moment, all he's got to say is, hey, Pete, good job. Said, what does Jesus say? Put your sword away, Peter. If I wanted out of this, I could get myself out. If I wanted out of this, I could call on my Father and He will provide me deliverance. I don't need your help. In fact, there's a sense in which Jesus does do this on an earlier occasion. In Luke chapter 4, verse 29, that when He's preaching in His hometown, they push Him out to the edge of the cliff. Luke does not tell us all the details. I wish he did. It's one of those things. They want to kill Him. And in Luke 4:29, He passes through them untouched and doesn't get killed. Because in Luke chapter 4, essentially He says, that's not happening right now. This is not the time where you kill me. I will not be killed now. Doesn't He do it again here? In fact, listen to the scope of the language when He says, verse 53, I could now pray to my Father, and He will provide me with more than 12 legions, folks. 12 legions. To press that just a little bit, in 2 Kings 19, an angel of the Lord, did you catch that? An angel of the Lord slaughters 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night. An angel of the Lord. So when Jesus says, I could call on 12 legions of angels, He's not just saying, if I want off of this, I can get off of this. He's saying, if I want to end it all, I'll end it all. That point's made in other places, by the way. Matthew 13, the parable of the judgment. What's happening? The angels will gather all things out that offend. What does Paul say in 2 Thessalonians 1, 7 and 8? That He will send out His fiery angels in retribution. They will take care of judgment. They will take care of issuing in this end time. Jesus' statement in Matthew 26 is huge. It's not just I'll get out of this pain. It's I'll end the world. You understand, folks? We've already made the point. Romans 1, 2, and 3. If Jesus ends the world in Matthew 26, what happens? We stay lost. We stay separated from God and His holiness with no hope. Not what Jesus wants. In fact, it's painfully clear what Jesus wants in Matthew 26 is to be compliant with the Father's good will and to fulfill the Scriptures that will make it so that we can come into fellowship with God. that we can maintain fellowship with God. Folks, what if He had said, I'm not ready? End of the world, stopped it all. We would have been lost. How many times do we say that, though? How many times do we say, I'm just not ready? You know, maybe there's an opportunity. We need some servants. We need some teachers. These kids need Bible class teachers. And we say, well, I'm not ready. I don't want to serve yet. I don't want to help my brethren yet. No, we don't say it like that, do we? We just say, well, and I don't even know what that means. But, that's the same. What people say when they don't want to serve. We say, I'm not ready. Maybe there's an occasion to teach somebody the gospel. They need the message of Christ, and I'm not ready. I'm not ready to tell them. I'm not ready to have that conversation. We say it so often. We're going to fast forward through the Matthew account just a little bit. When He is taken in verse 56, because He willingly goes with them, He is paraded through the city. And He is taken to Annas, the high priest, then to Caiaphas, the current high priest under Roman rule. He's then taken to the official room of Caiaphas so they can pronounce judgment on Him according to the Jews. He's then taken to Pilate, who will look at Him and then send Him to Herod, who will then send Him back to Pilate. And what I want you to understand is, at the point we're going to start reading again, He's been paraded through the city. He's met every high official that could say something to Him or about Him, and by the time we go back to the scene, He's been all over the place. Abused and mistreated. Look at Matthew 27, verse 22. Jesus could have said, why should I? Verse 22 of Matthew 27. Pilate said to them, what then shall I do with Jesus who is called Christ? They all said to Him, let Him be crucified. And the governor said, why? What evil has He done? But they cried out all the more, saying, let Him be crucified. Then Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was rising. He took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. And all the people answered and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas to them. But when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered Him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium, gathered the whole band of soldiers around Him, and they stripped Him and put a scarlet robe on Him. And when they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on His head, and a reed in His right hand. And they bowed the knee before Him and mocked Him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spat on Him, and took the reed and struck Him on His head. And when they had mocked Him, they took the robe off Him, put on His own clothes on Him, and led Him away to crucify Him. When they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. And when they had come to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, the place of a skull, they gave Him sour wine mingled with gall to drink, and when he had tasted it, he would not drink it. What if, in this moment, as He's been paraded around the city, as He's faced all the vitriol they've already thrown at Him, what if He says, why should I do this? What's in this for me? In fact, folks, that never really enters His mind. What He is predominantly occupied with is the thought of the Father's will and the thought of what this will do for you and I. By the knowledge of my righteous servant, He shall justify many. Isaiah 53. Folks, why should I? Oh, because of that. It was because of our predicament. That Romans 5, 6 through 8, that we were enemies, we were helpless, we were alienated from God, and we needed Him. We needed God to intervene. We needed the gospel hope of salvation, and that's exactly what He provides to the lost and the afflicted. We needed Him. That's exactly what He provided. I'll take you back to the day of the cross, not just what we're reading, but I want you to understand. If He says, why should I? If He says, I'm out, at any point, everything's done. You know how hard it would have been to get up that morning knowing what was coming? How hard it would have been to get dressed, to converse with the disciples. How hard it would have been to walk out to the Garden of Gethsemane knowing what's coming. How hard it would have been to watch the multitude come across the valley of the Kidron and carrying their torches and their weaponry. How hard it would have been to stop Peter, knowing what's coming. Now, whether or not Jesus in some sense maybe limited some of his foreknowledge, I don't know, but the reality is crucifixion was a pretty common practice in the ancient world. If he's condemned to death, that's what's going to happen. Scourging is a pretty common practice in the ancient world, and what's on his mind in the Garden of Gethsemane perhaps are some of those very things. People died from the scourging alone. I'm convinced he was scourged twice, actually. In historical fashion, there was a lighter scourging and a release, and if somebody was condemned to death, there was a heavier scourging and then the cross. And as you start comparing all four gospel accounts, that seems to make the most sense of it, that there was a lighter scourging and then a later scourging that was much heavier as he went to the cross. As they tie him to a hitching post, and soldiers mock him and take those whip of cords and lacerate his back. There were accounts of individuals that had entire organs fall out of their body because the skin was just flayed off of them in such a degree. You know, folks, that's the back they throw that royal robe on and start mocking him. How much did it hurt when they took the robe back off? He doesn't say no more. When they finally do condemn him to death, as we just read, and they put a condemned sign upon him to carry him out through the city. Everybody's going to line up and mock him. Everybody's going to line up and make the show. They're going to watch. And he's so weak already, perhaps from not eating, not sleeping, and a couple of scourgings, Simon the Cyrene is going to be commissioned to carry his crossbeam. The horizontal crossbeam a 30-year-old carpenter can't carry by himself. It's because he is that beaten and wore out. So Simon's going to carry it for him. When they get out to the hill of Golgotha, the vertical post would have been on the ground already. What we're looking for is that top horizontal piece, not the lowercase t, but the uppercase t. They will stretch out Jesus, and they will lay his hands upon that horizontal beam. Folks, at any point in the process, he can stop it. He says, no more, I'm done. And it stops. And yet the insults continue, the blasphemy continues, even so much as soldiers stretch out his hands, and soldiers hold nails, and the soldier raises the hammer. How much restraint would it have taken to watch that hammer go up in the air, knowing you could stop it? And generally the nail would have been sent right through the wrist, not the hands. The hands wouldn't hold the weight, but right between the bones and the wrist. And this beaten, bloodied man, God in the flesh, watches as the hammer falls. Between every blow of the hammer. If it gets to be too much, if he's done with it, he says no more. Folks, they're going to do the same thing to his other hand. And once they hoist it up, how much pain that would have caused. They hoist it up and they set it on top. And they would put a little peg right underneath his rear end. Basically, curling his feet up and driving one nail through his heels. And they would bend the back of that nail so his feet wouldn't slide off. And so as he exhausts himself, he slouches down onto the peg, and with every breath he must rise up to take it. What kills people on the cross is that they suffocate. They get so weak that they can't take breaths anymore. And so he slouches down. You understand that that's why some of the texts say he rises up and yells one last cry, because he takes one last deep breath and he rises up off of that seat and he cries out, Father, it is finished. Into your hands I commend my spirit. Folks, I want you to understand something. He says, I'm done. It's over. I want to push that one step further. Look down at verse 40 or verse 35. He could have said, I will. And there they crucified him, And they divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there, and they put up over his head the accusation written against him, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then the two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and another on the left. And those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." Likewise the chief priests also, mocking with the scribes and elders, said, "He saved others. Himself he cannot save. If he is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God. Let him deliver him now if you will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God." Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him the same way. You know, you would almost think that by the time you finally get up on the cross, you would just have the pain to reckon with. At this point, I'm just hurting, but I can handle the hurting. And what continues? The blasphemy, the mocking, the tormenting, the taunting. He could not escape any of it. He got no reprieve from any of it. What if he says, "I will"? What if in this moment the accusations, they even say, "Well, if you're who you say you are, if you're the king, if you're the Son of God, well, if you're this person, you can come down." What if he says, "You know what? I will. I will come down from the cross. Declare for all who I am. I've said it all along, but I'll declare it now publicly, here in the middle of the crucifixion. You've never seen this before, come down from the cross." Nobody could do that but the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. What if? What if he says, "I will"? I will end all the pain, all the blasphemy, all the insults. Brethren, where does that leave us? Had chosen to do 1, 2, and 3 again. Lost in sin, destined for eternity in hell, and that's not what he wanted. In fact, you understand that what he's facing in this moment, what he is enduring, is making the way, the truth, and the life possible. He is paving the highway to holiness. He's giving us the avenue wherein we can have reconciliation with God. He is making the gospel. He cuts it short. If he quits now, we are lost. You know what he does say instead? He says, "I will." Oh, no. Don't misunderstand me. He doesn't say, "I will come down from the cross." He doesn't say, "I will silence these accusations." No, he says, "I will see this through. I will see it to the very bitter end, and I will see in 3 days." Indeed, to sit here and think that is marvelous that Jesus does that for the gospel. It's marvelous that Jesus does that so that we have the church. Brethren, you need to understand. He did this for you. I don't mean you as a collective, although that's true. He did this for you. In fact, that's part of Peter's point on the day of Pentecost. I don't know if you know this song. "I'm the one. I was not in the garden when he knelt to God and prayed. I did not kiss him on the cheek when Jesus was betrayed. I could not do a single thing to hurt God's only Son, but every time I sin on earth, I feel that I'm the one. I was not at the trial when the crowd jeered at his name. I did not make him bear a cross or walk a road of shame. I could not do a single thing to hurt God's only Son, but every time I sin on earth, I feel that I'm the one. I was not on the hillside when he gave his life that day. I did not nail his precious hands or take his robe away. I could not do a single thing to hurt God's only Son, but every time I sin on earth, I feel that I'm the one. I'm the one who shouted, 'Crucify.' I'm the one who made his cross so high. I'm the one who stood and watched Him die. What have I done? I'm the one. Folks, you need to see the personal nature of the cross. It's not just that Jesus died for the world, that He died for you. And as comfortable as we are with the empty tomb, and God has enabled it so, we need to be comfortable with the cross, or at least uncomfortable and comfortable being so. It is that horrific event that preceded it. I will make one final appeal. What excuses have you been using? What things have you found so easy to say? You need to obey the gospel? Oh, not today. I will one day, but not right now. I'm not ready. What obligations are you failing on? I need to step up and be the husband I'm supposed to be, to love my wife like Christ loved the church, to lead my family. Well, I'll do that one day. I'm not ready to do it yet. I'm not quite willing yet. I need to love my husband and submit to his loving leadership in the home. Oh, I'll work on that down the road. I'm not ready yet. What excuses have you been using? Now take note, folks. The king offered none. Instead, he said, I will. I'll go to the cross for you. Now what will you do for him? If you have a need of this congregation this morning, this is your opportunity to come to the king, to say, I will. I will be faithful. I will obey the gospel. I will serve. I will love. I will stay the course. And if we can help you in some way to do that this morning, this is your opportunity to come as we stand and as we sing.